I'd like to speak tonight about my memories of meeting some of the great baseball players of the 20th century. I was a big baseball fan growing up in Malvern, New York, and I think everybody's idol at that point, without a doubt, was the great Joe DiMaggio. He was a guy who was a tremendous all-around player. He could do everything and do it so gracefully, it was remarkable. Hit, field, throw. And on top of that, he's married to the most beautiful woman and the biggest movie star in the world. So all of us teenage boys thought he was the cat's meow. What else could you do? Greatest baseball player of that era and married to the most beautiful and famous of movie stars. But in a way, I felt sorry for Joe DiMaggio, and I'll explain why. DiMaggio, in my opinion, was not born or wanted to be famous. Two things in life he liked, and he told me this. Playing baseball was his great love, and also dating pretty women. If you look at his track record, before he married Marilyn Monroe, he married a beautiful showgirl, and he never remarried after Marilyn, but his brother Dom, who I knew, said that Joe would live from hotel to hotel. He would go from city to city, dating the prettiest girls in the city, and then move on. He never really settled down after Marilyn's death. DiMaggio was one of the most difficult men to get to. You didn't write him a letter and ask for an interview. You didn't call him. Very, very difficult. If you look on YouTube, I don't think you'll find, other than him endorsing some product, some savings and loan, an actual 30, 40-minute interview with DiMaggio.
Okay. First one, my students and I, Mr. DiMaggio, are always interested to discover why an athlete gravitates toward a sport. Would you say your older brother Tom first instilled in you a love of baseball?
Well, it could be partly so, but I kind of liked sports in a way when I was a kid. We had a playground close by, about a block and a half, and we used to frequent that. Of course, we played baseball, basketball, things of that nature, and touch football.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, on one side of the field was Hank Lucet, the great, he's the one who introduced the one-hand shot.
That's right.
There in that park as well, it was called the North Beach Playground.
Interesting.
And Fred Apostoli, who came from that area, he played some of the sports, but he went down to the gymnasium. He was the welterweight champion of the world one time. Fred Apostoli, do you recall the name?
Yes, very much.
And he was there too. We played on, it wasn't grass, it was real surface of tar.
Yes.
That's what we played on, asphalt. So that's where I got my learning of my sport. And right there at the North Beach Playground.
Would that be in Martinez, California, Mr. DiMaggio?
Right here in San Francisco.
In San Francisco. But of course, you were born in Martinez.
I was only 11 months old when folks decided to move to San Francisco.
I see.
From Sicily, and all the father could do was fish. He knew nothing other than fishing. And he wanted the brothers all to be fishermen in San Francisco. And DiMaggio said he didn't mind being a fisherman, but he had this one talent, he didn't know where it came from, that whenever he played baseball, this is primarily stickball in the streets, whatever pitch was thrown at him, he could hit it. He could throw it fast, hard, curveball, no problem. And when he played an outfield position, he'd hardly ever miss a catch or a grounder coming to him, and he had a fantastic arm. He can throw from center field right to home plate. Most people need a little break. He could throw directly. So he took this skill and he used it. I think he joined the San Francisco Seals. And then in 1936, Lou Gehrig's last year, DiMaggio is drafted into the Yankees. And immediately he shows his talent. Now, I was in awe of DiMaggio, because when I was living in Malvern, you'd always see articles in the New York Post. DiMaggio is out with this girl. DiMaggio is here. Whatever he did made news. No other bet. Mickey Mantle was popular, but DiMaggio was God. Mantle was an angel. And so when I first got in contact with him, I was very nervous on the phone, almost shaking, thinking that I'm talking to this very private icon. I could feel a sweat pouring down my face as I'm asking him questions. And by the way, he set some guidelines. He said, no personal stuff, no questions about my first wife or Marilyn. If you do that, I'm hanging up. So we stayed away from that. But I felt during the conversation a sadness, because here was a guy who you would think had everything, but he hated the fame. He said when he left the restaurant, remember he told me a story about going to Jack Dempsey's restaurant, and word had spread in the area that he was there. He said, I'll bet you 150 people were at the door wanting my autograph. And he said, this is a daily occurrence. This is not like one thing. I can't go to the men's room without people sticking a pen and a paper in front of me. They don't even ask anything, they just stick it. And he was always hounded by the press. He said his 9-month relationship with Monroe was basically running away from the press. I think they honeymooned in Japan, and the press was all over him. And he was not made for that kind of lifestyle. And I could feel a sadness as he is talking about this, because he let me talk about the press, but not specifically, Marilyn Monroe. He also had a terrible time relating to some of the Yankee players. Mickey Mantle took DiMaggio's place in about 1951. And imagine trying to fill those shoes. So I got the impression from DiMaggio that he resented Mickey Mantle's success. Mantle was tantamount to DiMaggio after a couple of years. So I got the feeling that he didn't particularly care for Mantle, not so much jealous, but I think he didn't like the fact that somebody so good was taking his place. And Whitey Ford told me, this is a picture, that Mickey would get so nervous when he knew he would have to have dinner with DiMaggio or go on some promotional type of adventure, that he would actually vomit each time before he'd come out to meet DiMaggio. Imagine that. This is these two great players, and because he could feel the resentment. So DiMaggio and I got along. He allowed me to also contact him other times to check on certain facts. And he was a very honest person. He never exaggerated on stories. The only person he talked about Marilyn Monroe to was a sports writer named Bert Sugar. And the famous line from that conversation, Sugar told me this, Sugar asked DiMaggio what it was like to be with Marilyn Monroe. And he said, well, Bert, it beats rooming with Tony Lazzari, who is his roommate on the road. So, but Bert Sugar was told certain things, and he took those secrets to his grave. So that Marilyn was a very off-limit type of subject. DiMaggio also told me how much he admired Lou Gehrig. I think he went to visit Gehrig when Gehrig had ALS and was dying, and he could see the progression of what was happening to the great Gehrig. And this moved him deeply, to see someone so strong and capable on the field, not able to feed himself. And I could feel him kind of tearing up as he told me that story. So those are some of my memories of the great Joe DiMaggio.